Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Two Chiefs, One Mic podcast. I am Scott Hughes.
And I'm Mike Hawkins. We're here, episode number 9. We've got some special guests again. Another tough topic to talk about. We're here with members of the Lucas Foundation, and we have Brian Sizemore and Jared Murphy, and we're going to get deep and talk again about the stigma surrounding officer suicide. We have Brian on here, who is the father of Lucas Sizemore. And instead of me getting into what it is, Brian, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Lucas Foundation, and tell us a little bit about Lucas in your story.
Okay. Well, you kind of started it. My name's Brian Sizemore. My family and I founded the Lucas Foundation early in 2024. The foundation was started in his honor and in his memory on January 9th. He got out of bed, went into his bathroom and got in the shower and put a 9mm in his mouth and shot himself. Took his own life. The same day, the inspiration for the foundation came, and I had to go to Atlanta to get his remains and his belongings and stuff. And while I was there, my sister-in-law, Louise, is here local, and she's an attorney. I called her from the hotel and told her, I said, Louise, I want to do that. We want to do this. The family wants to do this. Get the paperwork ready. I don't know what I want to call it. I don't know what our mission statement or any of that is going to be, but I'm not gonna shy away from this or turn away from this. This is important, and we want to do it. So the inspiration was within hours, and I would say within a week, the paperwork was sent to the state of Michigan to start the foundation.
Okay. So let's back up before we get there and tell us a little bit about Lucas, who he was, where he was, how he got involved in police work.
Sure. So he's all-American, average, downriver Michigan kid. Went to school here in Woodhaven, played sports, multiple sports, loved to golf, loved to go up north, played music, played the guitar, played the piano, all the things that a normal child does. He had tons of friends and, did very well in school and, had part-time jobs. He worked here local and did everything that, every normal kid does. Went to high school out at Summit Academy and then graduated and started going to Eastern Michigan University here in Ypsilanti. And then that's when we really first noticed his interest in law enforcement. He started taking the criminal justice classes, enjoyed it. And then his uncle Paul, who I had mentioned, I think at that point, Paul may have already been retired from HSI. He was this last year. He might have still been there. I'm not sure. Paul, Texas, I believe at the time. Anyway, his uncle Paul helped him get an internship with HSI. And that really, if you're a parent, you can tell, the excitement in your kid's voice and, the enthusiasm. And I mean, they were getting him up at 3:30 in the morning because they had to meet somewhere at 4:15 to go serve warrants. And that kid was out of bed, ready to go, dressed. And we really could tell then. It was just going to be a matter of what department or what agency, what part of the country, but we knew for sure he was going into law enforcement at that point.
So downriver here, we see a lot of people stay home because Brian and I, we are living communities next to each other. But why or how Atlanta? How did you find that?
So without saying names, a lot of family in law enforcement on my side, on Marie's side, on her brother and others. Lucas got a lot of advice from local PD and from family. He didn't want, and nothing wrong with small town police departments. He wanted the opportunities to do exciting stuff. And the advice that he got is that a lot of that stuff is very difficult to do in a small local police department. So he started looking at major cities. I want to say I'm not sure if he applied to New York. I know he applied to Chicago. I don't think he had any interest on going out west. He saw online posting that Atlanta was hiring and filled out the stuff online, and then he got a notification for some testing dates and stuff like that he had to actually go down to Atlanta, and they vetted him and physicals and a bunch of testing. He did all of that. He was down there probably 3 or 4 days, and I want to say within a couple of weeks they sent him a job offer.
How old was he, Brian? How old?
He was 22 when he accepted the job offer and went into the academy.
So did he graduate from EMU?
Yes, he graduated from Eastern Michigan, and that was in May and end of April, early May, and by August he was in Atlanta's Police Academy.
So he graduates with an undergraduate from EMU,
Mm-hmm.
and then gets this job in Atlanta. So
Yep.
then moves to Atlanta.
Yep.
He's single.
Single, no children.
Kid just fresh out of college, living his dream.
Yeah,
Wants to go to the big city where you can do, quote, real police work.
right. And he the police department and the Atlanta Police Foundation there have a wonderful facility. They built I want to say it's a 4-story apartment building for the police recruits.
Wow. Yeah, they're probably coming from all over the country, right?
They're coming from all over the country, and I've been there. I've been in there. I helped him move in, and the rent was really cheap. I want to say he was paying like $300 a month. Him and a roommate, they each had their own bedroom that locked. They each had their own bathroom that locked. They shared a full kitchen, washer and dryer and stuff right in the unit. Brand new, all nicely painted hardwood floors. And
what year was this? I'm sorry, what year was this?
That was 2022.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, right. In August, we end of the summer, I moved him into the apartment building. It's called the Unity Place.
So he's 22. He's got his 4-year degree from a very respectful university, EMU. Gets his dream job in Atlanta. Goes down there, completes the academy.
Mm-hmm.
Where does he get assigned first? Night shift, days, afternoons? Where does he go?
Well, they allow them to preference, and and again, this goes to, I guess, his personality. He did not want to be downtown directing traffic or anything like that. He preferenced not too nice of an area. In Atlanta they call them zones instead of precinct. So he picked a tough one, and he had the evening watch, so he worked from like 3:30 p.m. till 1-2 o'clock in the morning in Zone 4. Nice. Zone 4 in Atlanta.
Man, sounds like my kind of guy.
So he's there for a year and a half or so. During that time, any tough conversations back home? I mean, anything that you saw, that you heard, that no. Was there any struggles or?
Oh, Mike, nothing abnormal that any young man starting out their career and their life wouldn't go through. I mean, once he finished the academy, you have to move out of Unity Place, so he had to find an apartment, and everything that goes with that. You don't got anything, you don't have a pot to piss in, so he needs furniture, and he had to buy a car, and when you're 22 years old, you don't have a lot of money, so mom and dad helped him. We never got any indication that ever stressed him out. I don't think it bothered him. When he actually was on the road and working, I know that for the first month, probably the first 2 months, he was struggling getting used to the sleep patterns. And I told him, because I work crazy hours myself, I told him, I said, you have to treat that shift like it's a regular day shift. You wake up an hour and a half before you go in, work out, eat, take your shower, whatever, go to work, come home, stay up 3, 4, 5 hours, and then go to bed, and then get up like it's a 8 o'clock shift in the morning. You just got to, once you do that for a month or two, your body will adjust and you'll be fine. And it did. It straightened itself out.
So then we fast forward to that day, January? Is that what it was?
Yep, January.
I looked at
9th.
January 9th, and I looked at the obituary and went to the website, and him and I share the same birthday, as a matter of fact, which ironic. But so you get to that day, And from that moment, the Lucas Foundation really is started. So, what is the Lucas Foundation and how can it help police officers? Because I think many times, and Scott and I have talked before, and even on a prior podcast, we had somebody on talking about this. We're not the strongest when it comes to asking for help or
Right.
needing help.
Right.
What is the Lucas Foundation,
Well,
and what can it do to help the police officers?
so when I went alone to get him, and I drove because I couldn't get a flight down there fast enough. So the 11-hour drive gave me a lot of, I always say this, I was doing all the things while I was driving that you're not supposed to do. I'm going to admit it. I was on my phone. I was texting. I was on the internet looking for who knows what, but I'm the oldest in my family. I'm the oldest of my siblings. Both my parents are alive. I've never had to, deal with doing funeral services or going to a funeral home. I've never had to bury anybody. So this was all new to me. But driving down there and all of these thoughts going through my head, the Lucas Foundation, the acronym actually stands for Law Enforcement's United Crusade Against Suicide. Created it that way so I could tie his first name into it as well. And just last night, I said something similar to the effect, Mike, that I am not in any way a mental health professional. I work for AT&T. Humanly, I don't take advice well from somebody that hasn't walked in my shoes or somebody that hasn't done my job or done a job similar. Or so that's the main focus, I guess, of the Lucas Foundation is we want your input and Scott's input. You tell us what is going to work. You tell us what would make you more comfortable. You said that you're not comfortable talking about it. What would make you more comfortable talking about it?
So I think Scott, and we're trying to implement it here, but Scott, you have a great program.
Yeah. I want to back up there real quick, Brian, if you don't care.
Yeah, go ahead.
To answer Mike's question real quick, we do mandatory twice a year check-ins with mental health professionals. Mandatory, you have to do it. I just went last week, took my wife and one of my children with me. You have to go. It's been a great success for us. But I want to back up, Brian, to if you're okay with it. I want to talk about the day it happened, and I want to talk about he's in an apartment. You alluded in the intro that he went to the bathroom and he was in the shower and he committed suicide with a handgun. I assume, was it his department issued handgun?
No,
that was
not.
An off duty.
Yep.
Off duty weapon. Was there a girlfriend or a significant other at the time?
I don't. He was engaged, but I don't know. I don't believe she was in the apartment with him.
He was engaged.
Yes, he was engaged.
So was this someone that he had met then when he moved to Atlanta?
No, she was from the Downriver area.
Okay. All right. So did she move down there with him?
No, she had not at that point. I think that's what the plan was, that they were going to move in together.
I got you. So how did that? So a lot of our listeners, I think, are command staff or they're chiefs or they're folks that they're aspiring to become chiefs. And I have to ask, as long as you're comfortable, how did they notify you?
Okay. And I'm glad you asked, because I make it a point to say this to the recruits, even the recruits that were in his class, his classmates, the recruits at the police academy in Atlanta that I have the honor to speak to. I knew the names of all of his friends, a lot of his classmates, but I didn't have any of their phone numbers. They obviously probably had my phone number. They probably had my wife's phone number, the police department. It was Evan, my younger son, that called me. I'm assuming he was there as an emergency contact. I was already at work, and I have a routine. I set my stuff down. I go out back, and I'm back there doing something. And my coworker, we were the only two in the building. she comes running with my phone. She said, "Hey, Evan's blowing your phone up." Now, it wasn't odd. I mean, it was 5:06 a.m. Evan played college football at the time, and they practiced at 6 o'clock in the morning. So they had the team breakfast every day. The fact that he was awake and calling me wasn't odd. It's a dad thing. I'm figuring, okay, he needs gas or something's wrong with his car or whatever. So I called him back, and I could tell he was upset. And he said, "Dad, you got to sit down." And I said, "What?" Like that. I'm thinking, okay, you wrecked your car. And he said, "No, Dad, you got to sit down." And I said, "Evan, just fucking tell me." And he said, "Luke's dead." And then I kind of went blank for a second. I was trying to wrap my head around what I just heard and
And how old is he at the time?
Evan was,
Evan.
he would have been teen, probably 19. It's my only other son. We just got the 2 boys. And so again, I'm still trying to process it. Still hadn't spoken to Marie yet. Evan was at school, obviously, because he was just about to start football practice. I told him, drop everything you're doing, get your butt home. And
Brian, did you think he got shot in the line of duty or something happened?
I didn't know. And Scott, I've never asked Evan this question, but I don't know if he said this to me or this is what my brain wanted to hear. My brain heard he accidentally shot himself. Again, as a parent, you can't wrap your head around your child taking their own life. So that was probably a psychological thing. Called Marie, and she was just.
That's your wife.
Yes, that's Luke's mom.
Was there any did they try? So you think Evan, and again, I'm just asking these questions because I think there's some important takeaways here for leaders moving forward in their organizations. I have always been one that when you have to make a death notification, especially a line of duty, or in this case, another officer off duty, that those notifications when you can are made in person.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever an attempt to make contact? Was Evan like next of kin?
I don't know if he
emergency
was
contact sheet, or do you know?
That may be, and I'll be honest with you, Scott, I've never asked him who called him. My tragedy started when he called me, so I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
But after I spoke to Marie, I got home, she looked like she was melting. That's the best way I could describe it. I don't think she had moved from the spot. It took me almost 40 minutes to get home. I don't think she had moved from the spot where I talked to her on the phone. And she was incoherent and just, it was awful. So within minutes, I'm in my truck and I'm driving to Atlanta. And what you were alluding to, Scott, is I'm trying to think, who do I call? How do I find? I want to know for sure. And I didn't have phone numbers of any of his buddies. One of his best friends lived in the same apartment complex, but I had no way to contact him. I'm sure he was probably there. So it just popped in my brain. I called the Zone 4 desk sergeant. I looked up the phone number and I called the precinct. And I'm sure the technology being what it is, my caller ID came up and she didn't look at my first name. And she said, Sizemore, we're getting all these reports. Are you okay? And I said, ma'am, my name is Brian. I said, I'm Lucas's dad, and I'm getting the same reports, and I'm in my truck on my way to Atlanta right now. So she said, okay, Mr. Sizemore, Major Clay is on his way to the scene, and he'll call you as soon as he's got some information. I spoke to Major Clay maybe 10 or 15 minutes later, and then probably a half hour after that, it was Chief Shearbaum from APD that called me and gave me the official notification.
So you think, and to Scott's point, we're kind of sitting here thinking, man, not an in-personal notification, like even to call up to where you live and have the local department deliver the news, what I thought. So you think technology in the word getting out beat the official word of the police department to you?
Mike, I I was supposed to go out of town for work for AT&T anyway. I literally had a bag packed, walked in my house, saw Marie. Her mom lives with us. She's elderly. I knew it was going to be difficult for her to leave her mom without some kind of care, but that really wasn't, she looked right at me. She said, "There's no way I can go down there to get him. I can't see him like that." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm not waiting for anybody. I'm leaving right now." There would have been no time for anyone locally to get me before
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I was on I-75. Evan called me. I picked up my phone at 5:06 a.m. I was on southbound I-75 by 6:15.
And I think that's a good message for, like Scott said, our viewers. Word travels so fast. Leaders have to get ahead of that message and get out there because the story reaches out. And now you have your 19-year-old son breaking the news to you because
Right.
he's already heard it and they're still
Right.
trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
So, and I know we talked about, so let's go forward. And I know offline we talked a quick second. How has the response been from Atlanta PD then and even now? You said you go back and talk to them. How has your relationship been with the Atlanta PD?
So when Lucas, we went, of course, obviously, any parent would, we went to his academy graduation. Now, I don't know how every state does it in Atlanta. They are sworn in. He was sworn, his graduation was in May. He was sworn in February, issued all of his equipment to start his field training. If I understand it correctly, you have to be a sworn police officer in the state of Georgia to be able to do all of that, be in a car and have a service weapon and tasers and all of that stuff. So he was already on the road and kind of working, but with a training officer. So in May, we went to the graduation, which was mostly just a ceremony. And at the end, Chief Shearbaum, like every police chief, has some remarks, and he started to direct his remarks to the parents. And he told us that not just our kids, but all of us too are now part of that big blue family. And sitting there, I'm thinking, yeah, I've heard that line of horseshit before. And later, I wrote Chief a letter. Never been so wrong about something in my life. Those people in that department have embraced us and helped us with everything. And when I got there, the police foundation put me up in a hotel. The police foundation gave me gift cards so I would eat, and I couldn't eat anyway, but they took care of, they thought of everything that I was potentially going to need when I got there and took care of it. I walked into the hotel, there was chaplains there, department chaplains. Chief's detail was there, chief was there, and that was just the day that it happened. Since they've given me the opportunity to go down there and speak to the recruits, I think Lucas's passing and some of the other, there's been more than one, has kind of kick-started what they're trying to do. They work really closely with a mental health professional named Dr. Carla Sutton Moore, and she is wonderful. She's set up programs there at their new public safety training center outside of Atlanta, and they have a officer wellness program and an officer wellness room, and it's a wonderful facility. And I can't, of course, I'm biased and my views are limited because that's really the only police department that I'm close enough with that I see it close and impersonal. But they're doing an awesome job.
Well, that's good to hear, especially in a tragedy like that. If there's something that Atlanta PD did it right in and took care of their family.
But yeah,
that is refreshing. So, Brian, we're going to let you kind of just take a quick breather here, and we want to talk about the Lucas Crusade, which is raising awareness. And I know, Jared, you've been sitting there quietly as we're trying to get this story, and we'll let Brian catch his thoughts for a minute. But Jared, if you could tell us a little bit about what the Lucas Crusade is and how it got going and what it's going to do.
So really, it's an effort overall to raise awareness about law enforcement suicide, which, as you guys know, and I hope most of your audience know, but most civilians do not know that suicide is the leading cause of death for law enforcement officers. I just want to let that sink in for a minute, because if you think about all the hazards that law enforcement face, whether uniformed, especially uniformed law enforcement officers, but also detectives and federal agents, all the hazards that they face in their careers while facing down danger and arresting bad people that need to be behind bars, suicide is the leading cause of death for us. And that to me is a strong indication that whatever we're doing is not working. And we need to come up with solutions and change our culture to smash the stigma of talking about law enforcement mental health. And so the biggest effort that the Lucas Foundation is undertaking is a 1,000-mile law enforcement relay run that's going to begin in September. And it starts on September 23rd at Atlanta Police's training facility. And it's going to run for the next 7 days, 24 hours a day, night and day, through Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. And it's going to come through the Downriver community, Mike. And we're going to finish
Perfect.
in Campus Martius in downtown Detroit. And there's a lot of symbolism there, right? Luke's first law enforcement job was in Atlanta. We're leaving from the place where his career started, and we're bringing him home. And along the way, there's 144 legs. The majority of those transition points where the baton is passed from one group of runners to the other primarily are at police stations, sheriff's offices, state police, federal law enforcement offices. And that's purposeful. And this is really important for your office because we're trying to stimulate that conversation with law enforcement leaders. When the departments know that they've got 30 runners that are coming through their area and the transition's happening in their parking lot, 15 more runners are continuing on to the next point. Why is that happening? And it'll create conversation. It's forcing chiefs like yourselves to have the conversation with their people, to talk about what resources there are, to say, hey, it's okay to use those sick days when you're not feeling right. And you guys know better than anybody that in our profession, we see things that other people don't see. We do things that other people don't do. And there's this analogy that I've come up with. You know, you can imagine what the coal miner looks like when he emerges from a shift in the coal mine. And he's covered in that black soot. And, you know, law enforcement are also covered in that emotional soot. You know, our encounters with civilians are usually on the worst days of their lives. And so those are infrequent incidents. But when we have those encounters, it's every single time. And for a variety of reasons, that weighs on you. And so we're doing this run to draw attention, first of all, that suicide is the leading cause of death for law enforcement. Second of all, to raise funds for the solutions that the foundation is trying to provide for our heroes.
Jared, that's a phenomenal analogy. I mean, I've never.
I was going to
thought
say
of-
the same thing. You imagine that soot on the
Yeah.
that's on the inside, right? That you never even heard it mentioned that way, but it's perfect.
Yeah, I've been traveling this country for 13 years as a national instructor, international, I guess, if you count Canada. And I literally stand in front of thousands of police officers every year. And one of the courses that I teach, we spend a significant amount of time talking about suicide and taking care of yourself and wellness and well-being. And I've never heard it put like that. And that's just you can close your eyes and you can visualize what that looks like, and you can imagine a police officer carrying all that inside of them. Jared, how do people? You reached out to me on LinkedIn, and we're gonna promote the hell out of this relay race because it's folks got to know. Folks want to get involved. Where do they go? What do you need other than runners? What do you need? How can people help?
Thank you. So first of all, our website is lucascrusade.org. On that site, there's a tab that shows you the route of the relay. There are 144 different little tabs that you can click on. And if you happen to be from, let's say, the Nashville area, or you're from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, or you're from Cincinnati, Ohio, and on and on and on, there are legs of varying distances. I think the shortest one is 1.2 miles and the longest one is 16. You can join us and run. You don't have to be a law enforcement. You don't have to be a first responder. We really hope that we get a lot of those, but we'll take anybody that wants to join us. We want to name each leg in honor of a suicide victim, a first responder suicide victim. We've already got some of those. to kind of bring the issue home to that community. We'd love it if agents, officers, deputies from those areas run, but if not, civilians. The hardest part that we're going to have, Scott, is filling the legs on a Tuesday night during the middle of the week at 3 a.m. running through the mountains of Tennessee. That's not going to be an easy lake.
Yeah, I'm out for that one. You got the 1 miler near Trenton. I'm okay, but I'm not running in the mountains. We'll find somebody.
When you were saying that, Jared, I was thinking I was in the NA with Mike. I saw his yellow brick road run. Do you have anything less than a quarter of a mile?
It's back. There it is.
There's the brick
yeah,
behind
it's sitting next to the cigar brick and the golf brick and everything else over there. So,
well, I think that we've established that Mike's role is marketing for us. So we need that.
All right.
But you mentioned those towns, and we're in the NA with these people, and they're working in these towns. This is great to reach out and share this with some of our contacts and get it out there as well, because
absolutely
perfect. I mean, it's perfect.
Jared, this is I think you just answered the question. When this thing starts, it's nonstop. Is that right? There's no breaks.
Even stations. To be very specific to answer your question, we have set times that each lake begins. And we have to do that because we have to arrive in Detroit at a certain time. And if we're handing off the baton whenever the runner comes in, it's too loose. So we've set it, I believe, at 11-minute mile paces, which is pretty manageable. So there may...
Did you hear that, Mike?
I can do that.
You got that? Check.
So there may...
Hey, we've got a guy here at work that'll run 100 miles, and he does those ultra marathons. I'm like, oh man, it'd be great to get him down there.
Absolutely.
So that's smart, Jared. Sorry. Keep going. I apologize. So you have to be in Detroit at a specific time. So yeah, you got to keep. Yeah.
And we've got a pretty big we've got an ambitious media plan. We think that there's going to be national coverage. There's going to be local coverage. It's just a way of stimulating this issue, stimulating conversation about it.
And I assume the route is the route specific enough on your website where folks will know exactly what road or route you're like. Is it down to the street or is it more generalized?
I know what that is, but it gets way too complicated to show that on the website. But it'll tell you the distance, the elevation gain, the elevation loss, the difficulty, stuff like that. And it follows I-75 south to north. But we're never on I-75. We're on rural roads.
Jared,
that'll probably come right through Trenton then.
The pop-up windows still have the GPS coordinates, don't they?
Yes.
The start and stops. Yeah.
Well, perfect.
Jared, are you? Sorry, Mike. Are you? Do you have any sponsors?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
So far, we've landed some pretty big ones that are kind of establishing our credibility. So Home Depot, Dunham Sports, General Dynamics Land Systems, Skaggs RV in Elizabethtown, Kentucky is providing us our first RV. We're hoping to get at least one more. We've got some organizations here in the Detroit area, LAHC. We've got some big ones that are on the line. And listen, we want corporate sponsorships. There's no question. And we're seeking a lot, especially across the law enforcement support community. So companies that provide uniforms, vehicles, weapons, equipment, technology, analytical support, all that stuff. We want to tap into that community that has made a buck off of law enforcement contracts, law enforcement business. That's our critical target set. But we really want people, right? So we have lots of people that have given, modest donations because they're touched by the idea, they're affected somehow by by law enforcement suicide. And that money's going to a good cause. And you're not going to encounter an organization like the Lucas Foundation where literally 100% of what you're donating is going to the cause. And that happens because, number one, it's a very small organization. You're looking at most of it right here. But number two, there's no overhead, zero.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Give us that website one more time.
Lucas Crusade.
LucasCrusade.org if you want to help out. That's awesome. Great job.
And you guys have done some other events as well, right, in this area. I know you had a polar plunge, and I know Andy Starzak, who we went to the FBI Academy with, kind of organized some of that. And am I correct where some of them from Atlanta flew up just for that? Was that correct?
So it started because Atlanta sent their honor guard for Lucas's funeral.
Okay.
That honor guard was probably 10 officers plus another dozen or so more of his classmates and coworkers came. So right, you're familiar with the area, Mike. The Holiday Inn Express right up here was full of police officers. I go there the morning after the funeral service to give one of the officers the original poster of the logo of the Lucas Foundation because Chief Shearbaum wanted it. He had already left. He had already went back to Atlanta. So I gave it to one of the officers. I called Chief on his phone, said, "Chief, just letting you know, I gave that poster to Officer Boyd." And he was like, "Okay, thank you very much." He said, "Andy's going to be up there in a minute. He's taking some of those guys to go do a polar plunge." And Chief kept going on and on. I said, "Hold on." I said, "Back up a second." I said, "What are they going to do?" He said, "They're going to go do a polar plunge." I said, "Your guys are going to go do it?" And he says, "Yeah, what is that?" I said, "Andy's getting them to jump into the Detroit River." And I said, "I'm going to go watch." So I did. I went.
I did see a video. I saw the video of it. Yeah.
I did go watch. So a couple weeks go by. It was brutal watching those guys do that. So a couple weeks go by. I call Andy. I said, "Andy, I got to tell you something funny." And he says, "What's that?" I said, "Evan wants to go in that water." And he laughs. And I said, "Oh no." I said, that's not the funny part. I said, "If he's going to go in it, I'm going to go in it." So then Andy ran with that and turned that into the first polar plunge. He got all those police officers to come, the ice dippers, they call themselves over there in Grozeal, that go in the water. And it's something higher than we understand. It just so happened that it fell 2 days before you and Lucas's birthday. So
Yeah, I knew they said it was about his birthday there. Yeah.
so that was totally accidental, but that became the day. So now every year the annual polar plunge will be on the Saturday closest to your guys' birthday. So I'll bring you next February. I'll bring you a cupcake with a candle and a towel, and
He doesn't need any more cupcakes.
you're gonna be right there with Jared and I going in that water.
Yeah. Yeah, be close to. That's a lot of candles there. But no, great. You guys have had some other events. Anything else you want to say about the foundation, about the event? Anything that you want to get off your chest so viewers can
As far as I'm concerned, I want your viewers and I want the law enforcement community to know that the foundation is in the process of, we want a treatment and training program for you, designed by you, with your help, your input. Every kind of officer, every department, every agency, every job function within those departments from all over the country. Tell us what works. Tell us what doesn't work. What do you like? Who do you like to talk to? Who do you not like to talk to? All in the effort to make or help you be more comfortable when you do need to go talk to somebody. I know how hard it must be to talk to a professional. In my opinion, which might mean nothing, let's figure out a way to get you to at least do that.
but it's a lot easier to talk to somebody than it is having to do what you have to do today and talk to people about the consequences of that, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that's the main point of this whole story. We've got to
Absolutely.
get guys to do that.
Absolutely.
Brian, I want to shift gears just for a second. Not really shift gears. I want to go back on. You've mentioned the Atlanta police chief several times throughout this 45 minutes here we've been speaking. Because I said earlier, a lot of our listeners are command or aspiring to be command. Can you just kind of summarize what was it about the chief that really resonated with you that you would want other chiefs or aspiring chiefs to know if they're ever faced with a tragedy like this? Because it sounds like he really left an impression on you, and I think that's important.
I still talk to Chief Shearbaum all the time. I have his personal number. He's got my number. We text. He's a religious guy. He is just, you can, before we started recording I kind of let you guys know that how this was going to come out of me. He's the same way. He's not, I don't want to say he's emotional like that, but you know when you're talking to somebody if you're being bullshitted or not. And that guy is true blue. He loves those officers that are under him. And so let me simplify it for you. No offense to you, Mike, and I know you're right down the street from me. If Evan came to me this evening and said he wanted to be a police officer, it would be Atlanta where I would want him to go.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
That's strong. Yeah, that's strong for a leader like that to leave that impact on you. That's great to hear.
Brian, tell me too. You just mentioned Evan. How's he doing?
He's doing better. He quietly struggled a lot at the beginning, and he still does. He's shifted gears a little bit. He was just a few credits short of graduating from Lawrence Tech, and the shock of all of this, he came home, which I'm grateful that he came home because I feel at ease seeing him every day and seeing him in our house every day and can keep a better eye on him. He's still struggling, I think, but he's adjusting. He's got plans to join the Army. I believe he's going to try to become an Army Ranger here at the end of the year.
That's awesome. Good for him. Good. Brian or Jared, is there anything else that you want our listeners or our viewers to know about the Lucas Foundation, the relay run, anything else that you want to get out there?
We'd sure like to tap into your audience, your network, and encourage people to come out and join us September 23rd to the 30th. Check out the website. In urban areas, I have no doubt we're going to have no problem. We might have a couple hundred runners on individual legs. We might have some spots in the rural South and Midwest where we might have a hard time finding one. So please spread the word for us. I think everybody understands the meaning behind this, and so we could use every bit of help we can get.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it. Appreciate the time, Brian. Appreciate the story. I know it wasn't easy, but I think that's what makes it important, and I think that gives credence to the run of how important this is. So I want to thank you, Scott. You want to bring it home here for the final thoughts on this podcast?
Yeah, we've done 9 episodes now, and this is the second one where we've had to address this reality of police suicide, and this is a real problem. Leaders have to take mental health seriously. We can't just talk about it. We have to do something. Law enforcement is notorious for just kicking the can down the road, and it's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen to me, and that philosophy it doesn't work, right? So I appreciate both Brian and Jared coming on today to discuss this. I am confident that because of this podcast, we're going to help spread the word. So until next time, appreciate everybody tuning in to Two Chiefs, One Mic podcast. And we will most likely have Brian and Jared back on before this event kicks off. And I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.